The alarm screamed through the research vessel like a dying animal. Vaisha gripped her workstation with all four of her delicate hands as the shuttle lurched sideways. Her moth-like wings folded tight against her back in pure terror. The other scientists around her were shouting in 3 different languages, but she couldn't understand any of them over the noise. Brace for impact. Someone yelled. The shuttle hit the planet's atmosphere wrong. Vaisha knew this because she had studied atmospheric entry procedures for 6 years. They were coming in too fast and at the wrong angle. The heat shields weren't deploying properly. Through the viewport, she could see flames licking at the hull. Dr. Dex, her mentor, threw himself over her workstation just as the shuttle began to tear apart. His larger body covered her smaller frame. Vaisha felt the impact as a massive force that rattled every bone in her body. Metal screamed. Glass shattered. Then everything went dark. When she woke up, she was lying in dirt. Real dirt, not the clean floors of a research vessel. Her head throbbed with pain that made her want to close her eyes again and never open them. But something told her that would be a very bad idea. Vaisha tried to move. Her 3 legs responded, but pain shot through the left one. Not broken, she thought, just badly hurt. She could work with that. Her people, the Quillari, were not built for physical trauma. Their bones were light and hollow, perfect for flight but terrible for crashes. She was lucky to be alive. She pushed herself up and immediately wished she hadn't looked. Dr. Dex lay next to her, his body twisted at an angle that made no sense. His eyes stared at nothing. Vaisha felt her stomach twist. He had died saving her. The shuttle was in pieces around them. Fires burned in 3 different sections. Bodies lay scattered in the wreckage. Vaisha counted them with growing horror. 2, 4, 6, 7 crew members dead, out of 8 who had been on this survey mission. "You alive over there?" The voice was rough and spoke in Galactic Common with a strange accent. Vaisha turned her head and saw him. Marcus Webb, the human. She had argued against bringing him on this expedition. Humans were dangerous. Everyone in the Galactic Consortium knew this. They were violent, unpredictable, and had been banned from most scientific work after they kept treating research missions like military operations. But the Cargo Guild had insisted on sending one of their contractors, and Marcus had been the one they sent. He was climbing out of what had been the cargo hold. Blood ran down the side of his face from a cut above his eye, but he was moving like it didn't even hurt. His species was built differently than hers. Thicker bones, denser muscles. He stood a full head taller than any Quillari, and his body looked designed for violence in a way that made Vaisha uncomfortable. I said, "Are you alive?" Marcus repeated, walking toward her. "Yes," Vaisha managed to say. Her voice came out weak and shaky. "The others are dead." Marcus looked around at the wreckage with an expression she couldn't read. Humans had such strange faces, all flat with their eyes pointing forward like predators. He checked each body quickly and efficiently, feeling for pulses she knew he wouldn't find. "Just us then," he said finally. He pulled a bag from the wreckage and started sorting through supplies. "We've got maybe 3 days of food, 2 water recyclers, 1 med kit, and a plasma cutter. Oh, and this." He held up what looked like a metal rod, about as long as his arm. Vaisha didn't understand why he seemed pleased about finding a piece of scrap metal. "We need to signal the main ship," she said, trying to think like Dr. Dex would have wanted. "They'll be looking for us." "Can't," Marcus said, pulling out a small device and showing her a screen full of static. "Planet's got some kind of interference in the atmosphere. Blocks all communications." "I remember from the briefing." Vaisha felt cold fear settle into her chest. "Then how do we get rescued?" "We go up." Marcus pointed toward a mountain range in the distance. "Get above the interference layer. Signal from there." I'd say the peak is about 40 kilometers away. Maybe 3 days of walking? 3 days? Vaishya looked down at her injured leg. I can't walk that far. Not like this. Then I'll carry you. The casualness of his statement shocked her. You can't carry me for 40 kilometers. That's impossible. Marcus looked at her with those strange forward-facing eyes. You weigh what? Maybe 30 kilos? I can manage. But we need to move soon. Before dark. Why? We should stay with the shuttle. Set up a shelter. Wait for rescue to find us. Look around, Marcus said, gesturing at the landscape. What do you see? Vaishya looked. The planet was covered in thick vegetation, purple and black, instead of the green she'd seen on Earth documentaries. The trees were massive, with trunks as wide as the shuttle. The undergrowth was dense. And now that she was paying attention, she could hear sounds. Clicks, growls, things moving through the brush. This is a Class 9 death world, Marcus continued. The kind of place where everything evolved to kill everything else. That crash was loud. It was bright. And it smells like blood and fuel. Every predator within 10 kilometers knows we're here, and they're coming to investigate. As if to prove his point, something large moved through the trees about 50 meters away. Vaishya caught a glimpse of scales and too many legs before it disappeared again. We need to move now, Marcus said. He was already pulling supplies out of the wreckage, packing them into bags. Can you walk at all? Slowly, Vaishya admitted. That won't be fast enough. He fashioned a carrier of salvaged materials, working with quick efficiency that suggested he'd done this kind of thing before. Get in. It'll be uncomfortable, but it beats being eaten. Vaishya wanted to argue. Every part of her academic, civilized mind rebelled against the idea of being carried like cargo by this violent, primitive human. But Dr. Dex was dead. Everyone else was dead. And something was definitely moving closer through the trees. She climbed into the carrier. Marcus lifted her easily, securing the straps across his chest and back. The weight didn't seem to bother him at all. Hang on, he said, and stay quiet. Sound carries on worlds like this. They left the wreckage behind, heading toward the distant mountains. As the sun began to set on this alien world, Vaishya realized with creeping horror that her life now depended entirely on a human. The very species the galaxy had called too dangerous for civilized work. Behind them, the sounds in the forest grew louder. Hungry sounds. Hunting sounds. The first night was coming, and Vaishya had never been more afraid in her entire life. Marcus moved through the forest like he belonged there. Vaishya bounced slightly in the carrier on his back, trying not to make noise like he'd told her. Every step he took was careful but quick. He avoided dry branches. He moved around thick undergrowth instead of pushing through it. He was being quiet in a way that Vaishya's people understood, intellectually, but could never achieve physically. The Quillari had evolved on a world with almost no large predators. They had developed intelligence and technology because they didn't need claws or strength. Vaishya had written 3 papers on evolutionary biology. She understood survival of the fittest. But understanding it in theory and living it were very different things. Something's following us, Marcus said quietly. He hadn't stopped moving. Don't turn around. Don't make sudden moves. Vaishya's heart started beating faster. How many? 3 that I can see. Probably more I can't. His voice was calm. Too calm. They're pacing us. Waiting to see if we're easy prey. What do we do? Keep moving. Show them we're not easy. But the creatures didn't seem convinced. As the sun got lower, they got bolder. Vaishya caught glimpses of them through the trees. They were massive, easily twice Marcus's size. 6 legs each. Scaled hide that looked thick enough to stop bullets. And teeth. So many teeth. They're getting closer, Vaisha whispered. I know. Marcus scanned the area ahead. There, that rock formation. Defensive position. He moved faster now, not bothering to stay quiet anymore. The creatures noticed. They moved faster too. Vaisha heard them crashing through the undergrowth behind them. 3 became 4, then 5, then 6. Marcus reached the rocks and set Vaisha down quickly. Stay here. Don't move. He grabbed the plasma cutter and the metal rod from his pack. The plasma cutter was designed for cutting through ship hulls during repairs. It was not designed as a weapon. The metal rod was just a metal rod. Against 6 creatures the size of cargo trucks, these seemed like pathetic tools. The first creature burst from the tree line. It moved fast for something so large. Its 6 legs ate up the ground between the forest and the rocks in seconds. Marcus didn't run. He didn't even look scared. He just stood there, waiting till the creature lunged. Marcus moved at the last second, faster than Vaisha thought possible. The plasma cutter came up and sliced through the creature's front leg. The heat of the plasma cauterized as it cut. The creature screamed and stumbled. Marcus hit it with the metal rod, across what Vaisha assumed was its skull. Once, twice, 3 times. The creature dropped and didn't get back up. 2 more came at once. Marcus rolled under the first one's charge and came up swinging. The plasma cutter found soft tissue under the second creature's jaw. It fell thrashing. But the third one caught Marcus from the side, sending him sprawling. Vaisha watched in horror as the creature prepared to pounce on the human. Marcus was on his back, vulnerable. This was it. This was how they died. But Marcus didn't die. He jammed the metal rod into the creature's open mouth when it lunged, shoving it deep into the throat. The creature gagged and pulled back. Marcus used that second to grab a rock and smash it into the creature's eye. Again, and again, and again. The fight lasted maybe 3 minutes. To Vaisha, it felt like hours. When it was over, 3 creatures lay dead. The other 3 had run off, deciding that easier prey existed elsewhere. Marcus stood in the middle of the carnage, breathing hard. Blood covered his arms and face. Some of it was his. Deep scratches ran down his left arm. His right leg was bleeding from a gash Vaisha hadn't seen him take. But he was alive. Are you hurt? Vaisha asked, her voice shaking. Nothing serious, Marcus said. He was already gathering wood. We need fire. They'll be back when it's fully dark. Fire keeps most things cautious. Fire will attract attention. We should hide. Marcus looked at her like she'd said something funny. They already know we're here. Your species thinks like prey. Hide and hope the predator doesn't notice. Humans think different. We make the predator decide if we're worth the trouble. The trouble. He built a fire efficiently, using friction and dry wood. Vaisha had seen humans make fire in documentaries, but watching Marcus do it with injured hands while blood dripped down his arm was different. He worked through the pain like it didn't exist. Once the fire was going, he sat down and started cleaning his wounds with supplies from the med kit. His movements were practiced. He'd done this before. Many times before, Vaisha realized, "Why are you doing this?" She asked. "You could move faster without me. You could reach the signal point in half the time." Marcus wrapped a bandage around his arm. "Your crew. That's all that matters. I'm not your crew. We barely know each other. I voted against bringing you on this mission." "Yeah, I know. You made that pretty clear in the briefing." He didn't sound angry about it. Just stating a fact. But we were on the same shuttle. That makes you crew. Humans don't leave crew behind, even when it might get you killed. Marcus was quiet for a moment. He poked at the fire with a stick. "You know what makes humans different from most species in the galaxy? is not that we're stronger or smarter or more advanced. Most species beat us in at least one of those categories. Then what is it? We don't quit, ever. There's this thing that happened on Earth way back before we had space travel. These humans were trying to reach this place called the South Pole. It's the bottom of our planet. Frozen. Deadly. Their ship got trapped in ice. They had to abandon it and cross hundreds of miles of frozen wasteland with almost no supplies. Did they make it? Every single one. Because their leader made a promise. Not one man left behind. And he kept that promise. That's what humans do. We keep our promises even when it's stupid. Even when it's dangerous. Even when every logical species in the galaxy tells us to quit. Vaishya looked at this human sitting by the fire. He was bleeding, exhausted, surrounded by dead creatures on a hostile world. And he was talking about promises and crew loyalty, like it was the most natural thing in the universe. Your species is insane, she said quietly. Marcus smiled. It was the first time she'd seen him smile. Yeah, probably, but we're alive, aren't we? The sound started again as full darkness fell. Growls and clicks from the forest. Things moving just beyond the firelight. Marcus added more wood to the fire and settled his back against a rock. He kept the plasma cutter in his lap. Get some sleep if you can, he told Vaishya. I'll take first watch. You need sleep too. You're injured. I'll sleep later. Right now, keeping you alive is more important. Vaishya wanted to argue, but exhaustion was pulling at her. Her species needed more sleep than humans. 8 hours minimum. She tried to stay awake, but her eyes kept closing. The last thing she saw before sleep took her was Marcus sitting by the fire, staring out into the darkness, watching for threats, keeping his promise to crew. For the first time since the crash, Vaishya thought they might actually survive this. Not because they were strong or well-armed or lucky, but because humans, for some insane reason, simply refused to accept death as an option. The galaxy had called. Humans primitive, violent, dangerous. Watching Marcus tend to fire while blood seeped through his bandages, Vaishya began to understand what the galaxy had actually feared. It wasn't human violence. It was human determination. The terrifying, illogical refusal to ever give up, even when they should. The second day started before dawn. Marcus woke Vaishya when the sky was still dark. He'd kept watch all night. His eyes were red and tired, but he moved with the same careful efficiency as the day before. We need to cover ground while it's cool, he explained, chewing on a ration bar. Heat of the day will slow us down. Vaishya's leg felt better after rest, but not much. She could put weight on it, but walking long distances was impossible. She climbed back into the carrier without complaint this time. Pride seemed less important when everything wanted to eat you. The terrain changed as they traveled. The thick forest gave way to rocky ground cut through with deep ravines. Marcus stopped at the edge of the first ravine and studied it carefully. This is the only path to the signal point, he said. But I don't like it. Why not? Marcus pointed at marks on the rocks, scratches, deep gouges. Something territorial lives down there. Something that marks its hunting ground. Can we go around? Would add 3 days to our journey. We don't have enough food or water for that. Marcus checked his supplies. We go through, but carefully. He climbed down into the ravine with Vaishya still on his back. The walls rose high on both sides, cutting out most of the sunlight. The floor was smooth rock, worn down by thousands of years of water flow. Good for walking, bad for cover. Stay very quiet, Marcus whispered. They moved through the ravine in silence. Vaishya tried not to breathe too loudly. The walls amplified every sound. A dropped stone would echo for seconds. They passed bones scattered on the ground. Large bones. Some were definitely not from the creatures they'd fought the previous night. "Marcus," Vaisha whispered. "Look up." The walls of the ravine were covered in more scratches. But these weren't random marks. They were organized, deliberate. Someone or something had made these marks in patterns. "They're smart," Marcus said quietly. "Whatever a live-seer can think, plan." That's when Vaisha noticed the silence. The morning had been full of sounds. Insects buzzing, birds calling, the rustle of small animals. Now there was nothing. Complete silence. "They know we're here," Marcus said. "How many?" "Don't know yet. Stay alert." They moved faster now. The ravine twisted and turned. Marcus chose each turn carefully, always heading toward higher ground. Vaisha used her damage communicator to scan for thermal signatures. It barely worked, but she could pick up some readings. "Left tunnel," she said. "The right one shows heat signatures. Lots of them." Marcus went left. The tunnel sloped upward. They were getting close to the exit when Vaisha's communicator suddenly activated. It had been damaged in the crash and dead for a full day. Now it burst to life, emitting a high-pitched squeal that echoed through the ravine like an alarm. "Turn it off," Marcus shouted. Vaisha tried. She pressed every button, but the device wouldn't respond. The squeal got louder, and from deeper in the ravine came answering calls. "Lots of them. Run," Marcus said. He ran. Vaisha bounced in the carrier, holding on tight. Behind them, she could hear claws on stone. Many claws. Moving fast. Marcus's boots pounded against the rock. His breathing was hard but steady. He took turns without slowing, trusting his instincts. The creatures burst into view behind them. They looked like raptors from Earth's history, but larger. Much larger. And they carried crude tools. Sharpened rocks. Carved bones. Intelligence mixed with predatory instinct. The worst combination. "How far to the exit?" Marcus gasped. Vey single quotes. Shaw checked their position against her mental map. 200 meters. Too far. "We need to make a stand." He spotted a narrow gap between two rock formations. Natural choke point. Only wide enough for one creature at a time. Marcus ran for it and turned to face their pursuers. "How many bullets?" he asked, handing Vaisha his pistol. "What?" "The gun. How many shots left?" Vaisha checked. 6. "Okay, listen carefully. They're going to come through that gap 1 or 2 at a time. When I say shoot, you shoot. Aim for center mass. The big part of the body. Don't try for headshots." "Can you do that?" Vaisha had never fired a weapon in her life. The Quillari didn't believe in violence. They believed in negotiation, understanding, peaceful resolution. But negotiation required both sides to want peace. These creatures wanted food. "I can try," she said. "Good enough." The first creature came through the gap fast. Marcus met it with the metal rod, hitting it across the snout. It reeled back but didn't fall. Marcus hit it again. And again. The creature fell. 2 more came together. Marcus fought both at once, using the plasma cutter in one hand and the rod in the other. He was fast, but the creatures were faster. One got past his guard and lunged at Vaisha. "Shoot!" Marcus yelled. Vaisha aimed and pulled the trigger. The pistol kicked in her hands. The shot went wide, hitting the wall. The creature kept coming. She fired again. Another miss. The creature was 3 meters away. 2 meters. She fired a third time. This shot hit. The creature stumbled and fell. Vaisha's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the gun. More creatures pushed through the gap. Marcus was bleeding from new cuts. His movements were getting slower. Fatigue was setting in. He'd been awake for over 30 hours. fighting, carrying her, never stopping. How was he still standing? Left side, Marcus shouted. A creature was climbing the rock wall, trying to get around their position. Vaisha aimed and fired. Miss. The creature kept climbing. She fired again. Another miss. One bullet left. The creature reached the top of the wall and prepared to jump down at them. Vaisha took a breath like Doctor Dex had taught her for making precise measurements. Steady hands. Clear mind. She aimed and fired the last bullet. The creature fell. Nice shot, Marcus said. He sounded genuinely impressed, but more creatures were coming. Many more. Vaisha counted at least 15 still in the ravine. Marcus was running out of strength. She could see it in the way he moved, slower, less precise. He was human, but even humans had limits. Then Vaisha noticed something. The creatures were calling to each other. Not random sounds. Organized communication. They were coordinating their attacks. That meant they could also be confused. Marcus, I have an idea, she shouted over the noise of battle. Now's a great time for ideas. Vaisha grabbed their remaining ration packs and their emergency fuel cell. She mixed them together with some local plants and activated the fuel cell. The mixture started smoking, giving off a horrible smell. When I throw this, run, she said. She threw the smoking mixture as hard as she could back down the ravine. It landed in the middle of the pack of creatures. The smoke spread quickly. The creatures started making confused sounds. Their coordination broke. Some ran toward the smoke. Others ran away from it. They got in each other's way. Go, Vaisha shouted. Marcus grabbed her and ran for the exit. Behind them, the creatures were fighting each other in confusion. The chemical smoke from the fuel cell had disrupted whatever communication method they used. It wouldn't last long, but it didn't need to. They burst out of the ravine into open sunlight. Marcus kept running until the sounds of the creatures faded behind them. Finally, he stopped and set Vaisha down. He collapsed against a tree, gasping for breath. That was smart, he said between breaths. Really smart. You kept them busy long enough for me to think, Vaisha replied. We did it together. Marcus looked at her with those strange predator eyes. For the first time, Vaisha didn't find them frightening. She found them determined, focused, alive. Yeah, Marcus said, a small smile crossing his bloody face. Together. They rested for an hour. Marcus cleaned and bandaged his new wounds. Vaisha checked their supplies. They had maybe 1 day of food left, 1 water recycler, and they were still 20 kilometers from the signal point, but they were alive. Against all odds, a fragile academic and a stubborn human were still alive. Ready to keep moving? Marcus asked. Vaisha climbed back into the carrier. Ready. They headed toward the distant mountain. Together. By the 3rd day, Marcus was in bad shape. The infection in his side had spread despite the alien antibiotics. His skin was hot to the touch. His movements were slower, less sure. But he kept walking. Always walking. Never stopping. Vaisha insisted on walking herself now, despite the pain in her leg. Every gram of weight Marcus didn't have to carry might give him a few more hours of strength. They moved together across the landscape, Marcus leaning slightly on the metal rod like a walking stick. 15 kilometers to the signal point, Vaisha said, checking their position. We can make it by nightfall if we keep this pace. Good, Marcus said. His voice was rough, tired. That's good. The terrain changed again. The rocky ground gave way to vast plains covered in strange fungal growths. They rose from the ground like purple and black towers, some as tall as buildings. The air smelled wrong, sweet and rotten at the same time. I don't like this, Marcus said. Too open. No cover. Perfect ambush territory. But it's the fastest route, Vaisha pointed out. Going around would add another day. Marcus looked at the fungal plains, then back at her. He was thinking, calculating. Finally, he nodded. We risk it, but we move fast and we don't stop for anything. They entered the plains. The fungal growths were soft under their feet, releasing small puffs of spores with each step. Vaisha's scientific mind noted this was likely how they reproduced. The spores would spread across the planet, finding new places to grow. They'd walked maybe 2 kilometers when Vaisha noticed the first insect. It was small, about the size of her thumb, black with iridescent wings. It flew past her face, and she waved it away without thinking. Then she saw another, and another. Within minutes, there were hundreds of them. They didn't attack. They just flew around, observing. Vaisha felt her skin crawl. Something was wrong. Marcus, these insects, I see them, he said. Keep moving. Don't swat at them. Don't give them a reason to see us as a threat. But the insects kept multiplying. Hundreds became thousands. They filled the air like a living cloud. And they were getting more organized. Their flight patterns were too precise, too coordinated. They were flying in formations. They're a swarm intelligence, Vaisha realized. Each insect is like a single brain cell. Together, they think, can they hurt us? Individually, no. But millions of them? They could strip flesh from bone in minutes. Marcus's hand went to the plasma cutter. How do we fight a swarm? You can't. You can't punch them. You can't outrun them. You can't hide from them. Vaisha watched the insects with growing concern. They're learning our movement patterns. See how they're staying just out of reach? They're testing us, finding our limits. The swarm grew larger. Thousands became tens of thousands. The buzzing of their wings filled the air like thunder. They started flying closer, brushing against Vaisha's wings, landing on Marcus's arms. Testing. Always testing. Vaisha, I need solutions. Now. Vaisha forced herself to think. What did she know about swarm intelligence? They communicated through pheromones. Chemical signals. That's how they coordinated. But what triggered those signals? What did they respond to? Carbon dioxide, she said suddenly. They're attracted to carbon dioxide. Our breathing. That's how they track us. So we stop breathing? We slow it down. Way down. Your species can control breathing better than mine. It's a hunting adaptation. You used to track prey for days, right? You had to stay calm. Keep your breathing steady. Marcus understood immediately. Okay, show me what to do. Vaisha taught him the breathing technique. Slow breath in through the nose. Hold for 3 seconds. Slower breath out through the mouth. It reduced carbon dioxide output by almost half. Marcus picked it up quickly. His breathing slowed, steadied. The insects noticed. They seemed confused. Their formation broke slightly. But there were still too many of them, and they were still learning. We need a distraction, Vaisha said. Something that produces more carbon dioxide than we do? She looked at their remaining supplies. 2 ration packs. 1 water recycler. The damaged communicator. And the emergency fuel cell. The fuel cell burned a petroleum-based compound. When it burned, it produced carbon dioxide. Lots of it. I need your lighter, she said. Marcus handed it over without question. Vaisha worked quickly. She mixed the ration packs with the fuel from the emergency cell and added some of the local fungal spores. The mixture was unstable, dangerous. It could explode in her hands. This is crazy, Marcus said, watching her work. I learned it from you, Vaisha replied. Humans do crazy things and call it survival. She rigged the mixture to burn slowly, producing maximum carbon dioxide. It was a chemical decoy. The The swarm would sense a huge source of carbon dioxide and investigate, giving them time to escape. Well, I light this, we run. No looking back. No stopping. Understand? Marcus nodded. He was sweating from the fever. His eyes were glassy. But he stood ready. Vaisha lit the mixture and threw it as far as she could. It landed about 50 meters away and started burning immediately. Smoke poured out, thick and dark. Carbon dioxide flooded the air. The swarm noticed. The entire cloud of insects turned toward the decoy like iron to a magnet. They swarmed over it, investigating this massive new source of the chemical they tracked. Millions of insects, all focused on one point. Run. Vaisha shouted. They ran. Marcus's breathing was controlled despite the exertion. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. Slow and steady. Vaisha matched his pace, ignoring the pain in her leg. They ran through the fungal plains while behind them. The swarm devoured their decoy. The distraction lasted maybe 10 minutes. Then the swarm realized it had been fooled. The buzzing changed pitch, became angry. The cloud of insects lifted from the burning mixture and started searching again. But by then, Vaisha and Marcus had reached the edge of the plains. They dove into a cluster of rocks just as the swarm passed overhead. The insects searched for a while, but without a strong carbon dioxide signal to follow, they eventually dispersed. Vaisha and Marcus lay in the rocks, gasping for breath. Marcus's controlled breathing had fallen apart the moment they stopped. He was shaking from fever and exhaustion. That was brilliant, he said weakly. You saved us. We saved us, Vaisha corrected. Your breathing technique bought us time. My chemistry gave us an escape. Neither works alone. Marcus smiled. Even sick and hurt, he still found the energy to smile. You know, when we started this, I thought I'd be doing all the saving. That you were just cargo I had to protect. And now? Now I'm thinking maybe the galaxy had it backward. Maybe humans aren't the only ones worth betting on in a crisis. He coughed, wincing at the pain. Your people, you solve problems different than us. Better sometimes. You think of solutions we'd never see. Vaisha looked at this human who had carried her for 3 days. Who had fought impossible odds. Who was dying from infection, but still refused to quit. And your people refused to accept defeat. Even when you should. Especially when you should. Stubbornness? Determination. There's a difference. They rested for an hour. Marcus's fever was getting worse. Vaisha used the last of their medical supplies to treat the infection, but she knew it wasn't enough. He needed real medical care. Soon. How far to the signal point? Marcus asked. 5 kilometers. But Marcus, you need to rest. You're too sick. Rest when we're rescued. Come on. He tried to stand and nearly fell. Vaisha caught him, steadying him with her smaller frame. Together, they started walking again. Marcus leaned on her now, their roles reversed. The human who had carried the alien was now being supported by the alien he'd protected. You know what's funny? Marcus said as they walked. I spent my whole life thinking humans had to do everything alone. That asking for help was weakness. That we had to be strong all the time. And now? Now I'm thinking maybe real strength is knowing when you need someone else. Knowing when to let someone carry you for a while. Vaisha felt something warm in her chest. Not romance. Something different. Respect. Trust. The bond between two people who had survived hell together. 5 kilometers, she said. We can make it. Yeah, Marcus agreed. Together, we can make it. They walked toward the mountain as the sun set on the 3rd day. A human and an alien. Both wounded. Both exhausted. Both refusing to quit. The signal point waited ahead. They could see the signal point now. A mountain peak that rose above the interference layer, close enough to touch. Less than a kilometer away. So close that Vaishya could make out individual rocks on the slope. The Marcus had collapsed twice in the last hour. The fever was winning. His skin burned hot enough that Vaishya worried he might die before they reached safety. He mumbled sometimes, half aware. Words about Earth, about promises he'd made to people Vaishya would never meet. "Come on," she urged, supporting his weight. "Just a little farther. You can't quit now." "Not quitting," Marcus slurred. "Just resting my eyes. Don't you dare close your eyes. Look at the mountain. Focus on the mountain." They stumbled forward together. Every step was a battle. Vaishya's legs screamed in pain. Her wings dragged on the ground, too exhausted to fold properly. But she kept Marcus moving. One step, then another. Then another. That's when she saw it. The creature was massive. Easily 4 times the size of the 6-legged ambush hunters from the first day. It stood on powerful rear legs with smaller front limbs that ended in curved claws. Its head was all teeth and intelligence. This wasn't a mindless predator. This was an apex hunter. The kind that sat at the top of the food chain and knew it. "Marcus," Vaishya whispered. "We have company." Marcus forced his eyes to focus. When he saw the creature, something changed in his expression. Fear. Real fear. For the first time in 3 days, Vaishya saw Marcus Webb look afraid. "Alpha Predator," he said. "Been tracking us since the crash. Waiting for us to get weak enough. What do we do?" Marcus pulled away from her and stood on his own, swaying slightly. He checked his weapons. The plasma cutter was almost out of charge. The metal rod was bent and cracked. He had nothing that could stop something that large. "You run," Marcus said. "The emergency beacon is in my pack. Take it. Get to the peak. Signal for rescue. What about you? I'll buy you time. Draw it away." Vaishya looked at the beacon, then at Marcus, then at the creature watching them with intelligent eyes. Every logical part of her brain screamed to take the beacon and run. This was survival. This was the smart choice. Marcus was dying anyway from the infection. Saving herself was the only rational decision. But 3 days of watching this human refuse to quit had changed something in Vaishya. She'd learned that sometimes the logical choice and the right choice weren't the same thing. "No," she said simply. "What?" I said no. We didn't come this far to split up now. Vaishya grabbed the metal rod from his pack. "You taught me that humans don't leave crew behind. Well, you're crew too. Vaishya, you can't fight that thing. Your species isn't built for it. I know, but I can be smart about it." She studied the creature. "It's been following us for 3 days, right? Learning our patterns. Our weaknesses. Yeah, so it thinks it knows us. It thinks we're weak. Let's prove it wrong." The creature started moving toward them. Slow, confident. It had all the time in the world. Its prey was exhausted and injured. This was going to be easy. Vaishya's mind raced. What did she have? A dying human. A bent metal rod. A nearly dead plasma cutter. The emergency beacon, and 3 days of observation about this planet's ecosystem. "The ship's power cell," she said suddenly. "The one from the emergency beacon. How much charge does it have?" "Enough for 1 signal. Maybe 2. Why?" "Because I'm going to turn it into a bomb." Marcus looked at her like she'd grown a second head. "You're going to what?" "Your plasma cutter heats metal, right? If I connect it to the power cell and overload the safety limits, the cell will explode. Not a big explosion, but big enough? That's insane. Again, I learned from the best." Vaishya was already working, connecting wires with shaking hands. "You're going to get its attention. Make it charge. When it's close enough, I'll trigger the explosion. And if you miss, then we both die. But at least we die trying. The creature was 50 meters away now. 40. It was taking its time, playing with its food. Vaisha worked faster, her hands moving with desperate precision. Connect the plasma cutter here. Bypass the safety here. Overload the regulator here. One wrong connection, and the whole thing would explode in her hands. Almost done, she muttered. Just need 30 more seconds. The creature was 20 meters away. Marcus stood between it and Vaisha. He raised the bent metal rod like a weapon. The creature seemed to find this funny. It made a sound that might have been laughter. "Hey, ugly!" Marcus shouted. "Yeah, I'm talking to you." "Come on!" the creature charged. Faster than anything that big should be able to move. Marcus stood his ground until the last possible second, then dove to the side. The creature's claws missed him by centimeters. It skidded to a stop and turned for another charge. Done. Vaisha shouted, "Get it to charge again." Marcus stood up, waving his arms. "Come on! Is that all you've got? My grandmother hits harder." The creature roared and charged again. This time, straight at Marcus. No tricks, no playing. Just pure predatory rage. Marcus didn't move. Couldn't move. He was too weak. Too sick. The creature would hit him in seconds. Vaisha threw the improvised bomb. Her aim was terrible. The device flew past the creature's head and hit the ground behind it. For a moment, she thought she'd failed completely. Then the plasma cutter activated. Superheated metal met overloaded power cell. The explosion wasn't huge. Not compared to military weapons. But it didn't need to be. The blast wave hit the creature from behind, throwing it forward. It crashed into the ground, stunned. Now. Vaisha screamed. Marcus grabbed the actual plasma cutter and ran forward. The creature was trying to get up, shaking its head to clear the confusion. Marcus jammed the plasma cutter against its neck and activated it. The blade sank deep into soft tissue. The creature thrashed. Its claws caught Marcus across the chest, sending him flying. He hit the ground hard and didn't get up. But the damage was done. The plasma cutter had cut something vital. The creature's movements got weaker, slower. It tried to stand one more time, then collapsed. Vaisha ran to Marcus. He was bleeding badly from the new wounds. His eyes were half closed, but he was breathing. "Did we win?" he asked weakly. "We won," Vaisha said. "Now stay with me. Don't you dare die after all this." She grabbed the emergency beacon from Marcus's pack and activated it. The signal burst out, strong and clear. Above them, cutting through the atmosphere, a rescue ship changed course. They'd been found. Medical teams arrived within 2 hours. They loaded both Vaisha and Marcus onto stretchers. The human medics looked shocked at Marcus's condition. The Quillari medics looked shocked that Vaisha was alive at all. Nobody could believe they'd both survived 3 days on a Class 9 death world dot in the medical bay of the rescue ship. Vaisha sat next to Marcus's bed while doctors worked to save his life. The infection was bad. The new wounds were worse. But humans, she was learning, were very hard to kill. "Will he survive?" she asked the head doctor. "Probably. Humans are tough. Stupid, but tough." The doctor looked at Vaisha. "You should be in a bed too. Your leg is fractured in 3 places. I'll rest when I know he's okay." The doctor smiled. "You've been spending too much time with humans. Starting to think like them." Maybe she was. Vaisha watched the machines keep Marcus alive and thought about the past 3 days. She'd started this journey thinking humans were violent primitives, dangerous, unpredictable, too emotional to be trusted. Now she understood. Humans weren't violent for the sake of violence. They were protective, loyal to a fault. They didn't quit because quitting meant abandoning the people who depended on them. And yes, they were emotional. But those emotions drove them to impossible acts of courage and determination. Marcus woke up 3 days later. Vaisha was still sitting next to his bed. She'd refused to leave except for her own medical treatments. "Hey," he said, his voice rough. We made it, Vaisha agreed. "Thank you for not leaving me behind. You taught me something," Vaisha said. "My people think intelligence is about logic, cold calculation, making the smart choice. But you showed me that real intelligence is knowing when the smart choice is wrong, when the emotional choice, the loyal choice, is actually the right one." Marcus smiled. "You saved my life at least twice down there. I'd say we're even, partners." Partners. 6 months later, Vaisha stood on the bridge of a new research vessel. She'd been promoted to lead scientist of her own expedition. The Galactic Consortium had been shocked when she requested a human security chief. Even more shocked when she specifically requested Marcus Webb. "Ready?" Marcus asked, standing beside her in his new uniform. "Ready," Vaisha said that below them a new unexplored world waited. It was classified as dangerous, possibly deadly, the kind of place where intelligent species should never go. But Vaisha wasn't worried. She had learned something important on Kef 7. The galaxy had spent centuries calling humans monsters. Too violent, too dangerous, too primitive for civilized work. But when real monsters had closed in from all sides, when death seemed certain, a human had been exactly the hope she needed. Not in spite of human nature, but because of it. Because humans possessed something the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. The stubborn, illogical, beautiful refusal to accept that some things were impossible. "Let's go exploring," Vaisha said. Marcus grinned. Together, their ship descended toward the unknown world. A human and an alien partners in discovery, proving